one somersault, and a monkey crosses 33,000 miles in a single leap. And yet, later, the same monkey chose to walk beside a slow, plodding monk, step by step, for 14 years. Until they'd covered that very same distance, on foot. He could have carried the man there in one jump. So why didn't he? Good evening. This is Bedside Book Voice. Tonight, we're reading Journey to the West. If you're already lying down, good. That's perfect. Turn the lamp down low. Put your phone somewhere you can't reach. Pull the blanket up a little. You probably met this book as a kid. Loud, playful, gods and demons flying everywhere. But the quiet parts of it? They're made for the night. Because under all the monster fighting, it's really about one thing. How a person gathers back their own restless, wandering heart. Let me set a small rule first. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to understand it all. And you really don't need to take notes. Just follow my voice. What you'll carry away tonight is a handful of pictures, the kind you don't forget. A monkey, leaping out of a stone, on Flower Fruit Mountain. A pair of eyes, pinned under a mountain, for 500 years. A fan, at the edge of a burning mountain, that just will not be lent. And at the foot of the sacred peak, a scroll of scripture, with not one word on it. Fall asleep halfway? That's fine. 100 chapters, 81 trials, 33,000 miles. You don't have to hold all of it. A few pictures are plenty. And that question from a moment ago, don't rush to answer it. The monkey's one somersault is 33,000 miles. The road to the scriptures? Also exactly 33,000 miles. One leap, and he's there. So why insist on 14 years, walking it, step by step? Lay that question by your pillow, like a thin thread. When we get to the moment the true scriptures are taken, we'll come back and unwind it. For tonight, just hold this. How you walk a road may matter more than where it ends. Last time, we read Romance of the Three Kingdoms. All swordlight and fire, people coming together and falling apart, men fighting for an empire. Tonight's book turns onto a completely different river. It isn't fighting for an empire. It's wrestling with that small, stubborn knot inside one person. How the heart settles. How the temper cools. How you come to own a road, one step at a time. From slaughter to cultivation. We change to a slower river tonight, and walk a little lighter. Let's get to know the book first. Journey to the West is usually credited to Cheng'en, of the Ming Dynasty. It's China's first long novel of gods and demons. 100 chapters in all. Gods and demons, meaning the sky is full of immortals and monsters. But the monsters it writes? Mostly shadows of the human heart. Honestly, though, whether Wu Cheng'en really wrote it, scholars still argue. Some say the evidence is thin. You don't have to fret over that for the old man's sake. What we're here to listen to tonight is the story itself. The bones of this story are real. In the Tang Dynasty, there was a monk named Xuanzang. The one folk tales later called Tang Xuanzang, the monk Tripitaka. He really did set out, alone, from Cheng'en. Slipped out past the border. Crossed deserts. Climbed snow mountains. All the way to Tianzhu, which is India, to bring back the Buddhist scriptures. History records this trip. When he got home, he dictated a book, Records of the Western Regions, full of real mountains, real rivers, real customs. So let's be clear. The journey of Xuanzang really happened. But the disciple with 72 transformations, and all those demons? Those were added later. Layer by layer. by storytellers and writers, centuries on. How hard was the real Xuanzang's road? When he left, the court had forbidden it. So he was, in effect, slipping across illegally. He crossed 800 miles of shifting sand. His waterskin spilled. For nights, 5 days, not a drop. He nearly died out there. He'd made a vow. I would rather die taking one step west, than live by stepping one step back east. Listen. There's no monkey in that sentence. But the will in it is harder than any spell. Later, the book gave him 3 disciples of dazzling power, and in doing so, it tucked the most remarkable thing about the real man, underneath all the noise. And what was that thing? The sheer stubbornness of one ordinary body. The real Xuanzang was gone more than 10 years. Tens of thousands of miles. He reached Tianzhu, studied for years at Nalanda, and carried a great pile of scriptures home to Cheng'en. And once home, he didn't rest. He spent the rest of his life translating. Line by line. Until he died. A man who risked his life to fetch it young, and risked it again to translate it old. You see? In the true story, there's no cloud somersault. Just the plain, plodding work of one footstep after another. So where did all the monsters and the magic come from? They grew. A little at a time. Over centuries. Xuanzang's story was too moving. Ordinary people loved to tell it, and storytellers kept adding seasoning. By the Tang, there were legends of the pilgrimage. By the Song, there was a tale that already had a monkey pilgrim in it. By the Yuan, there were plays. The monkey, the pig, the river monk, one by one, invited into the story. And only in the Ming did someone stitch those centuries of scraps into the 100-chapter book we read today. So what you're hearing tonight? It's generations of people, draping robe after robe, over one real monk. So how did these disciples come to be? It starts with that monkey. In the eastern continent, in a country called Aolai, by the sea, there's a mountain. Flower Fruit Mountain. On its peak sat a magic stone, soaking up sun and moon until one day, it cracked open, and out tumbled a stone monkey. No father. No mother. Born from rock. Remember that birth. Everything about him later, the pride, the refusal to be ruled, comes back to that stone. A thing that grew out of a crack in a rock, all on its own, you can't expect it to be obedient from the start. It just can't. This stone monkey had nerve. There was a waterfall cave in the mountain that none of the monkeys dared enter. He shut his eyes, and jumped straight in. Found a whole hidden world inside. And got made king for it, the handsome monkey king. But once he was king, he couldn't sit still. He watched an old monkey die. And suddenly, he was afraid. Afraid of dying. So, to escape death, he sailed across the oceans, found a master called Patriarch Subodhi, and learned a whole arsenal. 72 transformations. The cloud somersault. See? All that running around, at the root, was fear of death. And that's very human. When we can't sleep at night, turning over and over, a lot of the time, it's fear, too. There's a lovely little detail in how he became a student. One day, in front of everyone, the patriarch tapped the monkey on the head 3 times. Then put his hands behind his back and walked off. Nobody understood it. Only the monkey did. 3 taps meant, come at the 3rd watch of the night. So at midnight, he slipped in through the back door, and only then did the master teach him the real arts. The quick ones catch a hint, and the whole thing opens up. That cleverness was his gift. And also the root of the trouble he'd cause. When the master finished teaching, he left him with a line. With all this power, when you make trouble someday, never say you were my student. Listen. Even an immortal knew. This monkey would, sooner or later, cause a mess. And the patriarch saw his flaw, too. Once the monkey learned to shapeshift, he got smug, and right in front of the others, he turned into a pine tree to show off. The whole hall cheered. The master called him over, and asked him this. That little display just now, did you want people to see your skill? Or to harm you for it? That question still holds up today. Flaunting your one talent to everyone you meet may not be the boost you think. It might be the start of the trouble. That very day, the master sent him down the mountain. A person who can't hold himself in, even the best teacher can only let go first. Back home, he started making trouble. First, down to the East Sea, where he took the Dragon King's sea-stilling needle. That staff that grows or shrinks at will, the golden cudgel. Then he stormed the underworld, and crossed his own name, and his monkeys' names, off the ledger of the living and the dead. One big stroke. What was he doing? He was trying to wipe death out of the rules. Entirely. Heaven didn't know what to do with him, so they tried a bribe. Give him a post. They called him keeper of the heavenly horses. Sounds grand. It was a stable hand. Once he found that out, he was furious, and rebelled against heaven. What came next, you probably know in 4 words. Havoc in heaven. 100,000 heavenly soldiers, and not one of them could handle a single monkey. But this uproar didn't start by flipping the table. There are a few brushstrokes in the middle, worth telling slowly. First they recalled him as the stable hand, and he quit over the small title. Then heaven gave him a name, great sage equal to heaven, and put him in charge of the peach garden. Honestly. Put a monkey in charge of a peach garden, were the peaches ever going to survive? He picked the ripe ones, the big ones, and ate his way through. Then he crashed the Queen Mother's peach banquet, ruined the immortal wine and food, and finally slipped into Lord Laozi's elixir room, and ate the finished pills of immortality like beans. By the handful. He wasn't evil. He just had no sense of rules. With good things right in front of him, it never once crossed his mind to ask, is this mine? Heaven was furious, and sent soldiers to seize him. They even brought out Erlangshun. They fought, transformation against transformation, until at last, Lord Laozi flung down a diamond ring from above, stunned him, and they caught him. But even caught, he couldn't be killed. Blades, axes, fire, lightning. None of it hurt him. So Lord Laozi threw him into the 8-trigram furnace, to melt him into elixir. He burned for 49 days. They opened the furnace, and not only was he alive. The smoke had scorched a pair of fiery, golden eyes into him. Eyes that could see through any disguise. And he leapt out, and went right on raging. See? Some suffering means to destroy you. And ends up becoming the very eyes you see the world with. Finally, the uproar reached the Buddha. The Buddha held out one hand, and made a bet. If you can leap out of my palm, this heaven is yours. The monkey heard that, and laughed. One somersault, 33,000 miles, all the way to the edge, where he saw 5 flesh-pink pillars. He figured this was the end of the sky. So he wrote on a pillar, the great sage equal to heaven was here, and left a little puddle to mark it. He flipped back, ready to claim heaven, and the Buddha told him to look down. At his own fingers. Those 5 pillars? The Buddha's 5 fingers. The puddle? Still there, between them. No matter how far he flipped, he had never once left that palm. When you're a kid, this part is just thrilling. Older, it carries another taste. A monkey of boundless power, leaping as far as he could, and still, never out of that one hand. The Buddha pressed him under the 5 phases mountain. One press. 500 years. A talisman on the peak. Hungry? They fed him iron pellets. Thirsty? Molten bronze to drink. Picture it. A creature who once turned heaven upside down, half his body buried in stone, wind and sun, 500 years, just a pair of eyes left, looking up at the sky. Those 500 years aren't only punishment. They're more like a sentence. No matter how great your power, if you can't govern yourself, sooner or later, you get pressed down. But turn it around for a second. Those 500 years weren't entirely wasted. He went from a wild monkey who'd bite anyone, who wouldn't even accept death, to a thing lying under a rock, for 500 years. And by the time he came out, the heat in him had cooled. He could take a word of advice. Sometimes, when life pins you down, motionless, it has this same flavor. You think you're trapped. But really, you're waiting. For a person. For one thing. To lead you back out. The monkey waited, and got Xuanzang. So if tonight you also feel something pressing on you, don't panic. Under that rock, maybe your next road is quietly brewing. And the one who steps in next, is the person who lets him out from under that mountain. Xuanzang, under the order of Emperor Taizong of Tang, was to go west for the scriptures. Passing the 5 phases mountain, he peeled off the talisman, and freed the monkey, took him as his first disciple, and gave him a name. Wukong. Wukong, awaken to emptiness. The name is carefully chosen. A monkey who wanted to grab everything, who even wanted to erase death, and what does the master send him off to awaken to? Of all things, letting go. But a monkey is still a monkey. Not long after he was out, they met 6 bandits on the road, and Wukong clubbed all of them dead. Xuanzang prayed, and asked, "How could you kill so casually?" Wukong's temper flared, and with one somersault, he was gone. Threw down the load. Quit. And at that moment, the Bodhisattva Guanyin brought Xuanzang something. A gold-trimmed cap, to coax onto the monkey's head. And a verse, to teach the monk. Called the tightening band spell. The moment the monkey put it on, the cap grew into his flesh, and wouldn't come off. And when Xuanzang chants the spell, his head splits with pain, and he rolls on the ground. A lot of people don't like the tightening band spell. They feel it's a leash, the monk squeezing his disciple. But think it through slowly, tonight. A monkey nobody can govern, who'd even flip over heaven, what can rein him in? Reasoning with him doesn't work. The only way, at first, is a dose of pain. That band, plainly put, is the first time a creature who'd always run wild has a boundary on him. You don't get to do whatever you want. It hurts. But it's also where he begins, slowly, to learn one thing. Some matters aren't about whether you can. They're about whether you should. And that measure, in between, a lot of us are still learning it. Half a lifetime in. The team picked up more people along the way. At Gao village, they took in Zhu Beiji, the pig. At Flowing Sand River, they took in Sha Monk. And there was a little white dragon, turned into a white horse, to carry Xuanzang. 4 pilgrims, plus a horse. The crew for fetching the scriptures, finally complete. Their backgrounds, by the way, are none too glorious. Don't be surprised. Zhu Beiji was once Marshal of the Heavenly Reeds, in charge of the navy. He drank too much, harassed the moon goddess Cheng'en, got cast down to the mortal world, and was even born into the wrong body, a pig's body, into that shape. Sha Monk was once the curtain-lifting general, by the Jade Emperor's side. And just because he dropped and shattered a crystal cup, he was banished to Flowing Sand River, taking flying blades through his chest, every day. The white dragon horse was once a dragon king's third son, who burned a palace pearl in one fit of fire, broke the laws of heaven, and was nearly executed. See? This whole pilgrim crew is made of people who erred in heaven and fell. For them, this trip west isn't a work assignment. It's atonement. A chance to become a person again. And that, ordinary people understand best of all. Who hasn't wished, at some point, for one more try? Look at these four alone, and each has his faults. But the old writer did something clever. A lot of people say, these four are really the several sides of one single person. Xuanzang is the heart that holds the direction. He has no real power. Couldn't trust a chicken. Meets a demon, and can only pray and weep. He even wrongs Wukong, often. But he has one thing the others don't. He holds to his point. Stubbornly. However hard, however many times he wants to give up, the one thing, going west, never wavers. On a team, on a road, the one you can least do without is often not the strongest fighter. It's the one who's fixed on the direction and won't turn back. No matter what. Wukong is the heart itself. A heart that can't sit still, that charges headlong. The old word for it is the mind monkey. The mind is like a monkey, leaping up and down, impossible to grab. In a sense, the whole book is this mind monkey, being tamed and settled, step by step. He's the most capable. And the hardest to manage. He can see through demons, and the master so often won't believe him. Have you had this moment? That voice inside you saw the thing clearly. And yet you chose not to listen to it. And believed, instead, the words that were easier on the ear. Shubeiji, the pig, is all the things in us that won't let go. Greedy for food, for sleep, for money, for women. And the second things get hard, he's hollering, let's split up, divide the luggage, everyone go home. Don't be too quick to laugh at him. That voice at midnight, telling you, let it go, stop pushing, just sleep, that's often the pig inside you. He's not bad. He just wants to slack off, to be comfortable. And that, everyone has. But Beiji also has a side that's especially honest. Especially endearing. Send him to scout the mountain road, and halfway, he finds a nice patch of grass and naps, then wakes, and makes up a story to fool everyone. Only, Wukong has turned into a bug on his back and heard the whole thing. That little scheming, it's so human. Who hasn't slipped away for a quiet break when there was work to do, then found himself a reason that sounds just fine? But notice this. Beiji shouts let's split up every single day. Yet his feet never actually leave. 14 years. He got through the Fire Mountain. Through Lion Camel Ridge. Grumbling and cursing, and never fell a step behind. That's the part of him that tugs at you. First to quit with his mouth, but his body, always still in the line. If there's someone like that beside you, don't mind that he talks a lot. He's steadier than anyone. There's one more, who barely seems to lift a finger, and yet is always the safety net behind it all. Guanyin, the Bodhisattva. When Wukong can't win, when Xuanzang is carried off, the white dragon horse, the tightening band, those few resurrections, she arranged them all. From behind. She won't walk the road for you. But when you reach a step you can't get past, you look back, and she's there. There are people like that in life, too. A parent. A teacher. Some old friend. They don't live your days for you. But on your hardest few turns, it was them who quietly caught you. If someone like that comes to mind tonight, say their name softly, to yourself. That's a good thing too. Monk is the steady, quiet duty that carries the load with its head down. On the whole road, he speaks the least, and works the most, hauling the luggage at the very back. When the team is shouting itself hoarse, he's the one in the middle, smoothing it over. A family, a team, always needs one person like that. Never the star, but the one who, gone, lets the whole thing fall apart. And the white dragon horse, once a dragon king's son who erred, sentenced to carry the scriptures, walking the whole way in silence, it reminds you. On this road, some of the giving makes no sound at all. Now stack all four together, and you stop seeing four characters. You see one whole person. Someone with a direction they want, a restless heart, a lazy appetite, and a quiet, uncomplaining sense of duty. Going for the scriptures, from the outside, looks like four pilgrims and a horse, heading west. But underneath, it's one person, scooping up these scattered forces of the self, pressing them into a single fist, and pointing them all one way. And how hard is that? You'll find out tonight, just lying here, thinking about your own self. The part of you that wants an early night, the part that wants to scroll the phone, the part that wants the work done. Hardly ever of one mind. Now, let me tell you why every demon is fixated on Xuanzang. The book puts it like this. Xuanzang is a good man, 10 lifetimes of cultivation deep, and a single bite of his flesh buys you eternal life. So the whole way along, the demons plot with everything they have, and all they're after is that one mouthful. Yet here's the thing. Xuanzang himself couldn't truss a chicken. He can't even handle a run-of-the-mill demon. And isn't that curious? The weakest one on the team turns out to be the most precious. The one everyone has to guard. The heart of a team often isn't the best fighter at all. It's the one who carries the answer to why we set out in the first place. With Xuanzang along, the whole pilgrimage means something. Take him away, and no matter how mighty Wukong is, he wouldn't even know which way to point. On the road west, 81 trials, one after another. And even that number is deliberate. Not just thrown together. The old people believed 9 was the great number, and 9 times 9, 81, meant wholeness. So 80 trials weren't enough. On the way home, they had to add the trial of falling in the water, to make it a full 81. Sounds like the ancients fussing. But there's a sense in it. Some lessons can't lose even one part. A little bit short, still isn't whole. We won't count the trials one by one. Let's pick a few with some flavor, for the night, and tell them slowly. The most famous, probably, is the 3 strikes on the white bone demon. The demon wanted Xuanzang's flesh, and changed 3 times. First into a village girl. Then an old woman. Then an old man. Wukong, with his fiery golden eyes, saw through it at a glance, and clubbed each one dead. But Xuanzang, with his mortal eyes, only saw his disciple kill 3 good people in a row. So he chanted the tightening ban spell, and in the end, drove Wukong away. Why does this part hurt? Because it writes one thing all the way through. The one who sees most clearly is so often the one least believed. The one who tells the truth, the first one shown the door. Haven't you met this in the daytime? You saw it plainly. And nobody listened. And somehow, you were the one in the wrong. The women's country is one of the few soft brushstrokes in the whole book. The Western Liang women's country is all women. And the queen took a liking to Xuanzang, wanting him as her husband, to share a whole kingdom's wealth. The book writes it restrained. But the feeling in it is real. Xuanzang didn't waver. And yet, he wasn't heartless. He pressed that feeling down, beneath the direction he had to go. Cultivation isn't being without feeling. It's having feeling, and still choosing to walk on. This trial had no fighting at all. And it was the hardest of all. Blades and spears, you can block. Tenderness? How do you block that? The fire mountain, you probably remember. 800 miles of flame, no way through, and you need Princess Ironfan's banana leaf fan. But Princess Ironfan is the Bull Demon King's wife. And she has an old grudge against Wukong. Her son, the Red Boy, had been taken away by Guanyin. So that fan simply will not be lent. Wukong shrank himself and crept into her belly. Then disguised himself as the Bull Demon King to trick her. Tumbling through several rounds before he finally fanned the fire out. This trial tells you something. Some roads are blocked dead, not because of the road, but because of a grudge you tied off long ago, sitting there, in the way. Old debts unsettled make new roads hard to walk. There's another trial that looks lively, but is really about making a mess, and then bowing your head. Stealing the ginseng fruit at Five Estates Temple. The temple has a ginseng fruit tree that blossoms once in 3,000 years, and fruits once in 3,000. The fruit looks like little babies, and one bite grants tens of thousands of years. Wukong, greedy, knocked a few down to eat, and got a scolding from the two boys who tended the fruit. In a temper, he threw a fit, and tore the whole tree up. By the roots. And now, he'd made real trouble. That was the treasure tree of the immortal Xuanzang, and immortal roots are hard to revive. So Wukong had to go from place to place, begging for help. Asked every immortal of the seas. None could save it. Until at last, Guanyin used the sweet dew from her vase to bring the tree back. Sit with that process. A monkey who'd dare flip over heaven, for the trouble he'd made himself, head bowed, going from one place to the next, begging. Plenty of people can make a mess. Few are willing to turn back and clean it up. Growing up often begins with one sentence. I was wrong. I'll go find a way. Not every trial is full of high spirit. There's one where Wukong nearly gave up. Lion Camel Ridge. That place had 3 demon kings, each fiercer than the last, and all of them with big backers behind them. Wukong used every art he had, took fall after fall, until even he was frightened, and he went to the sacred peak, wept in front of the Buddha, and said, this trial really can't be passed. He wanted to break up the team. You heard right. Even the monkey who turned heaven upside down has his moments. Of can't go on. Of wanting to quit. Of hiding away to cry. And that brushstroke is one of the warmest in the book. It didn't write the hero was made of iron. The one who carries the most also has his midnight of breaking down. And once it's over, you wipe your face and walk on. That is what carrying really is. So if tonight you also feel you can't hold up, it's all right. The monkey cried too. There are also contests of magic that are a real pleasure. Like at Kartslow Country. 3 immortals had come. Tiger power, deer power, goat power. And they were treating the monks cruelly, with the king believing them blindly. So Wukong competed with them. Praying for rain. Guessing what was behind a screen. Then beheading. Cutting the belly open. Going into the boiling oil cauldron. Those 3 relied on tricks of the eye, on crooked arts. Wukong relied on the real thing. And won, round after round, until the 3 immortals showed their true shapes. A tiger, a deer, and a goat. 3 beasts who'd become spirits. The trial looks lively. And underneath, there's a plain truth too. Smoke and mirrors can fool people for a while. But when it comes to the real test, what counts is whether there's anything real inside you. Read deep enough into Journey to the West, and you taste a bit of how the world works. The demons on the road are fierce. But at the deadly moment, so often an immortal or a bodhisattva comes hurrying down, says, "This is my mount," or, "This is the boy who tends my furnace," who snuck away, and leads the demon off. Case closed. The ones Wukong actually clubs to death? Mostly the small demons, with no backing, no patron.
Wu Cheng'en wrote that brushstroke without a flicker of expression.
And once you taste it, you smile, knowingly, and feel a little chill, too. So even the world of the immortals counts your origins. Your connections. We needn't lose sleep over it. Just knowing the ancients long ago slipped this bit of the world's ways into a myth, that's enough. There's another trial I find the coldest, every time I recall it.
The true and false Monkey King.
Halfway along, a fake Wukong appeared. Identical to the real one. The same powers. And even Guanyin, heaven, and the underworld couldn't tell them apart.
The two monkeys fought, from the ground to the sky, from the sky to the sacred peak, and no one could say which was real. In the end, the Buddha recognized it at a glance. The fake one was a six-eared macaque. The marvelous thing about this part is this. That fake Wukong wasn't a demon from outside, at all. He was the bit of resentment, the bit of grievance, inside Wukong's own heart, taken form. What he fought wasn't someone else. It was another self. Have you had this at night? Two voices arguing in your head, one saying, let it go, one saying, why should I, fighting till dawn, and still no telling which is right. That's the fight in the true and false Monkey King. A person's hardest opponent is never an outsider. It's the other self. We've come to about the halfway point of tonight. And while it's quiet, let me be cheeky, and ask one small thing of you. If this voice has kept you company, give it a like, and a tap on subscribe. Think of it as a little oil, for this lamp in the night. No need to open your eyes. It's a one-finger thing. Do it and forget it. And if you don't, that's fine too. Good. Let's keep walking west. Trial after trial, the four of them finally reached the sacred peak and met the Buddha. The scriptures, surely now, it's complete? But here, the book hides one of its most haunting brushstrokes. The Buddha told two honored ones, Ananda and Kasyapa, to fetch the scriptures and hand them to Xuanzang. But the two opened with a request. They first asked Xuanzang for a gift. Plainly put, some benefit, some present. Xuanzang had begged his way the whole road. What gift did he have on him? So the two passed him the scriptures anyway. The pilgrims set off happily, and on the way, someone pointed it out. Those scriptures of yours, they have no words. They opened them, and it was true. Scroll after scroll, all blank paper, not a single character. The four were livid, and went back to argue with the Buddha. The Buddha heard them out. And then smiled. And said something that stays with you. The gist of it. These wordless scriptures are in fact the true scriptures. It's only that your people, in the eastern lands, can't read them, can't tell their worth, so you're given the ones with words. As for the gift, he said, once someone went down the mountain to chant scriptures for a household, and got only 3 pecks and 3 pints of grain gold for it, and I still thought he sold it too cheap, leaving his descendants short of money. The first time you hear this, you'll wonder how even the Buddha's house talks like this. But chew on it a few times, in the night, and the taste comes out. What's it saying? It's saying, the truly best things are sometimes empty. Wordless. And mortals can't read them. They have to have words, something to grip, something to see, before the heart feels settled. It's also saying this. What comes for free, too easily gotten, people don't treasure. Even the true scriptures need some weight, some cost, before you'll take them seriously. And that one brushstroke gives the whole novel of gods and demons a flavor of the human world. All at once. The sacred peak isn't some place without earthly smoke and fire, after all. Good. Now we can unwind that thin thread, by your pillow.
The monkey's one somersault is 33,000 miles, the Buddha's sacred peak is right there, one leap and he's arrived, so why must 4 pilgrims walk it, step by step, for 14 years? The book actually says it. Of the 81 trials, not one may be missing. Short one trial, and the scriptures can't be taken. Sit with that. What matters was never arriving. It's walking. Inside those 33,000 miles, the white-boned demon forces you to see who can be trusted, the women's country forces you to see what you want, the true and false monkey king forces you to see yourself. These, the cloud somersault can't flip them over, for you. Put it in your own days, and it's the same. Some thresholds you can't go around. And can't rush. You want to get rich overnight. You want to wake one morning with all your troubles gone. You want to skip the hard middle. But, a person changes in the walking. Not in the arriving. If Wukong had really carried Xuanzang to the peak in one somersault, he'd still be that monkey who turned heaven over, whom no one could govern. It was exactly the step and step and step that ground him, from a wild monkey, into the victorious fighting Buddha. No road is walked for nothing. Every trial you got through has grown into you. So the old people gave this book a name. Cultivating the Heart. What it tells isn't about going somewhere far, to fetch some thick stack of scripture. It's about how a person subdues their own heart. The phrase mind monkey, will horse comes from right here. The mind is a monkey, the will is a horse, and both love to run loose. Wukong's tightening band, Xuanzang's direction, Beiji's bit of greed and sloth, Sha Monk's quiet duty, put together, they are the whole process of one person, gathering the heart. By the end, what the scripture is, doesn't matter. That the person has changed, that's what matters. There's another fun thing about this book. It takes from everyone. The goal is Buddhist scripture. The hero's master is the Taoist patriarch Subodhi. And the lessons on the road are so often the Confucian set. Loyalty. Faith. Never giving up. Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, 3 houses mixed together in this one book, and none of them rejecting the others. So it can give a child a bit of fun. And give an older person a taste of cultivation. One book, holding both the refined and the plain, for centuries, the lettered and the unlettered have both loved it. And that, in itself, is no small thing. The book also hides one especially tender arrangement. Easy to miss. When the pilgrimage succeeds, and rewards are handed out, Wukong is named the victorious fighting Buddha. And the moment the reward comes, that tightening band on his head is simply gone. He reaches up to feel it, finds it missing, and asks his master, surprised, "Did you chant some loosening spell again?" Xuanzang says, "No. Since you've become a Buddha, of course, it's gone. Feel for yourself. Just sit with that for a second. Nobody reached over and lifted that band off you. You simply walked far enough, and it melted away by itself. Early on, you need a band on the outside, something forcing you not to run wild. But further down the road, once a sense of measure has taken root inside you, the outer band, well, you just don't need it anymore. The end of restraint isn't a tighter grip. It's the day you no longer have to be restrained at all. Keep that line close, on every night you're still at war with yourself. And after the true scriptures were taken, heading home, there's one last brushstroke worth turning over slowly. The pilgrims crossed the heaven-reaching river, riding on the back of an old turtle. Earlier, on the way out west, that turtle had done them a favor, and asked Xuanzang for one thing in return. "When you reach the sacred peak, put a question to the Buddha for me. I've cultivated for so long now, when do I finally get to take a human form?" Back then, Xuanzang said yes without thinking. But after he'd met the Buddha, and gathered the scriptures, with everything going on,
the question just slipped his mind. On the way home, he climbed onto the turtle's back again. The turtle asked, and Xuanzang had nothing to say. The turtle, stung, sank straight into the water, and tipped all 4 pilgrims, scriptures and all, into the heaven-reaching river. The scriptures got soaked. They fished them out, spread them on a big rock, to dry. And when they gathered them up, a few scrolls had stuck to the stone, and pulling them off tore away a corner, and the scriptures were damaged.
Missing a piece. Wukong was upset. But Xuanzang took it in stride, and said one thing. The gist. Heaven and earth were never whole to begin with, and the scriptures being a little incomplete fits that very principle. Wholeness isn't something human strength can force. Listen. 14 years of walking. 81 trials braved. And the scriptures brought home are, in the end, still short a corner. But that corner is well lost. It tells you, there is no truly perfect thing in this world. The scriptures not accepted. This brushstroke is the best line to keep for bedtime. In the daytime, how much of our tiredness is wrung out of those 2 words, be perfect? The work has to be flawless. The words watertight. The days without a single debt. But look. Even something as great as the pilgrimage, heaven left it a gap. That forgotten promise, that torn scroll, they aren't failure. They're the ordinary state of things. And the little bit you didn't manage today is the same. It isn't that you're not good enough. It's just the way this world is made. A real monk of flesh and bone. Xuanzang heading west, that part actually happened. And a monkey born from a stone, with power beyond measure, that's the robe that storytellers and writers kept draping, fold upon fold, across centuries, over that real monk's stubbornness. So what reaches you tonight isn't only Wu Cheng'en, only one man's pen. It's a single dream, retold and built upon by Chinese people, generation after generation. From Xuanzang in the Tang, to the tales of the Song in Yuan, to the Ming novel. One person, lugging a whole sackful of flaws, trading blows with their own heart the entire road, and arriving, at last, where they meant to go. You really don't need to memorize the name of each of the 81 trials. The pictures settle in by themselves. The monkey bursting out of stone. Those eyes, gazing up at the sky from under the mountain. The words left unsaid, in the women's country. The fan nobody would lend, before the fire mountain. And that scroll of blank paper scripture, at the foot of the sacred peak. Someday, when your heart is all knots, when you feel you can't govern yourself, one of these pictures will rise up, and murmur to you, gently. Easy now. A road is walked one step at a time. A heart is gathered a little at a time. And look, you're already on your way. If I could leave just one line by your pillow, I'd choose the plainest truth in the book. What matters isn't what scripture you took. It's that you walked the whole road. The thing you didn't finish today, the knot you couldn't untie, that fire mountain you can't get past, they aren't there to block you. They're there to grind you. And the day you look back, you'll find it was exactly these trials that made you into the you of now. A little steadier. A little softer than before. Sleep. This stretch ends here, for tonight. Before you sleep, one small question for you. Of those 4 on the road, which one do you think you're most like? The Xuanzang who holds his point and won't turn back? The Wukong with all the power who can't hold himself in? The Beiji who shouts let's split up but never actually leaves? Or the Sha monk who hauls the load with his head down? No rush to answer. When you wake, tell me in the comments. I read every one. If you like nights like this, subscribe to the channel, and tap that little bell. Next time, we'll read Dream of the Red Chamber. Journey to the West is about how a person gathers the heart back in. The red chamber is about something else.
A whole garden of splendor, a table full of laughter, and how it all became a dream you can't wake from and can't keep. From cultivation to the red dust of the world, tomorrow night we change rivers again.
Let the lamp stay dim, like this. Tuck the blanket in. 33,000 miles, or 81 trials, none of it has anything to do with you tonight. You don't have to subdue anyone. Don't have to rush any road. Don't have to prove yourself, real or false.
Wukong's ban dissolved long ago.
And your heart tonight can loosen too. Just a little. The fire of the fire mountain, leave it for tomorrow. The scriptures of the sacred peak, leave them for tomorrow to take. Right now, there's nothing you need to awaken to. Close your eyes. That is emptiness. This is Bedside Book Voice. Good night, see you in the pages.